Shedeur Sanders isn't Cleveland's next quarterback. He's their last one, if Todd Monken has anything to say about it. After years of cycling through arms, schemes, and half-built philosophies, the Browns finally stopped rolling the dice and started drafting a blueprint. Monken made Sanders a focal point, not for sentiment, but for structure. Every department, every role, every hire now filters through one lens. Does this elevate the quarterback? The hiring of George Warhop is proof. If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed. His return isn't symbolic. It's functional. The Browns' offensive line didn't just fail Sanders. It sabotaged him. Warhop was brought in to fix that, not with hype, but with 30 years of trench-level expertise and institutional fluency. This isn't a rebuild. It's an alignment, top-down, system-wide, and brutally focused. If Sanders fails now, it won't be because the Browns didn't try. It'll be because talent wasn't enough. But if the system holds and the plan delivers, Cleveland doesn't just get quarterback stability. It gets relevance in a conference where chaos at the position is a death sentence. There's no more guessing, no more hedging, no more waiting to see which way the wind blows. The Cleveland Browns have drawn a hard line in the dirt, and Shedeur Sanders is standing right on it. For the first time in years, maybe ever, this team isn't playing both sides. They're not talking about competition or letting it play out. Todd Monken has eliminated the gray area. Shedeur Sanders is the focal point of this entire franchise, not a placeholder, not a project, the priority, period. And that changes everything. Because once a head coach makes that level of commitment publicly, the entire structure of the organization shifts with it. Everyone is now accountable to the same objective. Elevate the quarterback. This isn't just a philosophical stance. It's a practical mandate that's already showing up in real, high-leverage decisions. Case in point, the hiring of George Warhop. This wasn't window dressing. This wasn't a bring in a name move. Warhop isn't here to babysit a young offensive line. He's here to correct the Browns' single biggest operational failure last season, the inability to protect their quarterback. Sanders' rookie year wasn't a referendum on his talent. It was a referendum on the environment around him. The numbers don't tell the whole story, but the film does. He was constantly pressured, consistently forced off platform, rarely given a clean pocket. And when he was given one, he delivered. His best throws, all of them, came when he had time, when the protection held, when he could step into his throws without flinching. That's not a coincidence. That's who he is, a rhythm passer, an anticipation-based decision-maker. You can't ask someone built like that to survive in chaos. And Monken knew it. That's why Warhop was the first big move. Because no amount of quarterback coaching can make up for a protection unit that leaks like a sieve. And Warhop isn't just experience, he's adaptable. He's coached every major protection philosophy in the league, from zone to gap to power to vertical. And more importantly, he's coached in Cleveland. He already knows the organizational DNA, the noise, the pressure, the scrutiny. He knows exactly what he's walking into, which means there's no onboarding delay. He gets to start solving on day one. This is what separates this Browns reset from the others. It's not reactive. It's not about tearing everything down and hoping for a miracle. It's targeted, focused, strategic. They didn't blow up the roster. They didn't dump talent in the name of some abstract rebuild. They took a hard look at what failed, and they addressed it directly. Offensive line was a failure point, and instead of blaming the quarterback or forcing him to adjust the dysfunction, Monken built a system that removes the dysfunction. Monken didn't copy-paste his old playbook from Baltimore. He didn't try to fit Sanders into the mold that worked for Lamar Jackson. In fact, he went the opposite direction entirely. With Jackson, Monken emphasized RPOs, motion, improvisation. With Sanders, it's progression reads, structured dropbacks, vertical spacing, timed releases. Why? Because that's what works for this quarterback. Monken isn't coaching off preference. He's coaching off tape. He's diagnosing Sanders' strengths and building around them, not against them. That kind of adaptability isn't just rare. It's professional. This approach is systematic. Even the front office is operating under a new directive. Cap strategy, draft philosophy, free agency. It's all being evaluated against one metric. Does this accelerate Sanders' development? That means no wasted picks on gimmick players. No flashy signings just to excite the fan base. Every move has to serve the quarterback. That kind of internal alignment turns a chaotic franchise into a stable one almost overnight. And it's already changing the energy around the team. Inside the locker room, there's no ambiguity. Receivers know who their quarterback is. Linemen know who they're protecting. The staff knows the mission. There's no confusion, no mixed signals. That clarity is invaluable. Externally, the signal is just as strong. Prospective free agents, scouts, analysts, they're all seeing the shift. For once, Cleveland looks like an organization that's not only committed to a plan, but actually capable of executing it. Let's be real. The Browns have been through every kind of rebuild. They've gone the analytics route. They've tried the culture-first approach. They've cycled through defensive-minded coaches. Offensive was kids and everything in between. None of it stuck because none of it was coherent. This one is. And the result isn't just philosophical. It's functional. If Warhop stabilizes a line and Monken's scheme delivers on its timing-based promise, Sanders isn't just going to survive. He's going to excel. The same traits that were smothered last season, anticipation, poise, progression, discipline, those will have room to breathe now. He'll be able to actually run the offense instead of running for his life. And when you combine that with Jim Schwartz's defense, which, let's not forget, was elite, you start seeing real balance. For the first time in years, Cleveland doesn't need its offense to be miraculous. It just needs to be consistent. And this version of the offense, with this protection plan, this coaching clarity, and this quarterback development structure, it can be exactly that. That's what makes 2026 so important. This isn't a rebuild season. This is a reveal, a litmus test. If it works, Sanders stops being a talking point and starts being a contender, not just for long-term potential, but for the Pro Bowl, for a top 10 offense, for postseason relevance. And if it doesn't, then the Browns will have no one to blame but themselves. Because they finally have everything in place. A tailored scheme, experienced protection coaching, and organizational alignment from top to bottom. This is as clean a runway as a young quarterback is going to get in the NFL. So yes, the pressure is high, but it's the right kind of pressure. It's the kind that comes from preparedness, from being ready. And if Sanders is what Monken and the tape say he is, then we're not looking at a developmental year. We're looking at a breakout. This is the moment where excuses end and performance begins. So what do you think? Is the Browns' full-throttle commitment to Sanders the blueprint for sustainable quarterback development? Or just another bold gamble waiting to be unraveled? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Hit like if you think Monken finally broke the Cleveland curse. Share this with your friend who's been screaming about offensive line play for 5 seasons straight. And make sure you're subscribed, because if this thing works, we're going to be talking about it a lot. Cleveland isn't asking for miracles anymore. They're building something grounded. Finally, something solid. And in the NFL, that's everything. Because success doesn't come from one explosive play or a lucky stretch of games. It comes from structure, from alignment, from being able to do the right thing over and over again, no matter who's watching. That's what 2026 is about for the Browns. It's about proving that they can do the right thing on purpose. Shedeur Sanders isn't being handed the keys with a shrug and a "we'll see." He's being handed a tailored machine, one piece at a time, every part designed to support his strengths. And if you follow Cleveland long enough, you know how radical that is. This is not the Browns we've known. This is not another round of false starts and buzzword-laden pressers. There's no fog here. Monken made that crystal clear when he called Sanders the top priority. Not a piece we like. Not one of our young guys with potential. He used definitive top-down language that draws a bright line around who this team is for. That's not just morale boost. That's a logistical reset. You can't overstate what it means for a quarterback to walk into a building and know, from ownership to practice squad, everyone is working to make him better. It simplifies every interaction, every meeting, every practice snap. Because when you remove ambiguity, you remove wasted time. Before this, the Browns were in a constant tug-of-war. front office pulling one way, coordinators pulling another, quarterbacks stuck in the middle trying to guess which direction to lean. Development in that environment? Nearly impossible. Now there's one direction. And that's why it matters that George Warhop isn't just a veteran coach, but this coach, specifically chosen to rebuild the foundation. The Browns didn't throw darts at a whiteboard. They brought in a technician with 3 decades of NFL experience who's already coached in Cleveland, already worked with Monken, and already succeeded with quarterbacks who needed structure over improvisation. Warhop's value isn't just technical, it's contextual. He understands what happens when protection collapses, and he knows how to fix it. But even more importantly, he knows what that fix allows a quarterback to become. Because when Shedeur Sanders finally gets consistency from his line, he won't be reacting to pressure anymore. He'll be reading defenses, processing, executing. That shift from survival to control is the entire difference between a quarterback flailing and a quarterback thriving. And it's not hypothetical. The film already showed it. When Sanders had time, his mechanics were crisp, his reads were decisive, his throws had pace and placement. It wasn't just good, it was elite. The problem wasn't Shedeur. It was what surrounded him. So now the Browns are flipping the whole equation. Instead of demanding their quarterback adjust to dysfunction, they're adjusting the organization to match the quarterback. It's subtle, but it's seismic. And Monken's offensive shift is a masterclass in self-awareness. Instead of trying to force the square peg of Sanders into the round hole of Lamar Jackson's RPO-heavy, space-driven design, he pivoted. Completely. Sanders isn't Lamar. He doesn't operate off instinctive chaos. He isn't a break-the-play quarterback. He's a rhythm guy, a timing guy, someone who sees windows a half-second early and throws into them like a surgeon. So Monken built a scheme to fit. Structured dropbacks, clean vertical spacing, progression reads that reward timing, not scrambling. That kind of design isn't flashy, but it unlocks what Sanders does best. It's the first time he's been given that kind of runway since entering the NFL. And it's why the 2026 season is being framed. Not as a rebuild, not as a learning curve, but as a test. Not for Sanders alone, but for the entire Browns infrastructure. Can a team that's historically been synonymous with churn, chaos, and change actually deliver a functional system, a cohesive plan, and sustainable execution? That's what's on the line. Because the pieces are there. A defense led by Jim Schwartz that's already proven elite. An offense being re-engineered with surgical precision. A quarterback with tools and IQ and pocket anticipation, if he's given space to breathe. There's no more room for slogans. This year is about doing, executing, proving that all the planning wasn't just window dressing. And if it hits, if Warhop gets the line locked in, if Monken's scheme runs on rhythm, if Sanders is allowed to be himself behind a functional wall of protection, then we're not just talking about statistical improvement. We're talking about arrival, Pro Bowl caliber production, top 10 offense, balance on both sides of the ball. A fully realized version of something Cleveland hasn't had in years. Stability. That's the prize. Not hype, not hot starts, not fluky wins. Real, lasting, blueprint-worthy stability. That's what this reset has been engineered to deliver. And if it does, if Shedeur takes that leap, if we look back at 2026 as a year it all crystallized, then the Browns won't just have a quarterback. They'll have a direction. The Cleveland Browns aren't making noise. They're making moves. And that's exactly what separates this reset from every other false start they've endured for the past 20 years. Because this time, it's not about who they say they are. It's about what they're actually doing, and all roads lead straight to Shedeur Sanders. Let's cut through it. The old Browns would have looked at last season's tape, seen the interceptions, the completion percentage, the collapsed plays, and panicked. They would have hedged, brought in a veteran QB to compete, tinkered with the scheme, pivoted midseason. You know the drill. Instead, Todd Monken watched the same tape and saw something different. He didn't see a broken quarterback. He saw broken protection. He saw misalignment between system and skill set. And then he did what competent leadership does. He addressed it decisively. You don't bring in George Warhop if you're not serious. Warhop isn't a coach you hire to babysit. He's not a token veteran added to a staff for balance. He's a builder. He's a problem solver. He's someone who understands an offensive line isn't just 5 guys blocking. It's a unit operating on trust, cohesion, and repetition. And when that foundation is firm, that's when a quarterback's real game shows up. It's already baked into the data. Go back to the film from Sanders' rookie season and look at his highest graded throws. Clean pocket, stable platform, 3-step rhythm, and he drops a laser in the tightest of windows. Those throws weren't lucky. They were repeatable, but only under one condition, when the chaos wasn't dictating the play. So the Browns didn't ask Shedeur to become someone else. They changed the environment. Monken restructured the offense, not for flash, but for flow. Progression reads, timed releases, routes designed to create defined answers, not improvisational chaos. Because Sanders doesn't want to guess what's happening. He wants to know. That's what this offense gives him. Clarity. And that clarity is bleeding into every corner of the organization. You can feel it in the way scouting has shifted. They're not chasing combined warriors anymore. They're finding pieces who fit the system. Receivers who understand route discipline. Running backs who block with purpose. Linemen who don't need raw power to be effective. They just need to be smart, communicative, consistent. Even strength and conditioning has changed. It's now aligned with Sanders' long-term development. Less about explosiveness, more about durability, core strength, pocket mobility. The kind of things that help a quarterback make it through December still throwing with velocity. That's not sexy. That's sustainable. And it proves that this isn't a marketing strategy. This is a cultural overhaul. Because for the first time, the Browns aren't just reacting to problems. They're building past them. And the result? A quarterback who finally has a team designed for his strengths. That's what separates Sanders from the ghosts of Cleveland quarterbacks past. He's not being asked to elevate dysfunction. He's not being thrown into the deep end with no life raft. He's being supported, intentionally. Monken's leadership is mature. Warhop's role is critical. Schwartz's defense? Already elite. The offensive line isn't being overhauled on hope. It's being rebuilt on fundamentals. Everything's pointing in the same direction. And that never happens in Cleveland. So yes, 2026 is a test. But it's not a gamble. This team isn't praying that Shedeur works out. They're banking on it. Because they've done the work behind the scenes to make it possible. And if it all comes together, if the scheme clicks, the protection holds, and the quarterback is finally allowed to play free, then we're not just talking about a turnaround season. We're talking about legitimacy. A Pro Bowl campaign isn't a fantasy. It's a benchmark. And a top 10 offense isn't pipe dream. It's a direct reflection of functional coaching and consistent execution. That's what this season offers, a real, measurable shot at Cleveland turning the corner. Not because of one star player, but because of an entire organization finally learning how to line behind its most important asset. This is what sustainable NFL success looks like. Coaches who adapt to their players, not the other way around. Coordinators who communicate instead of operate in silos. A quarterback given time, clarity, and consistency. A front office that doesn't panic under pressure. A locker room that knows the mission. Cleveland has spent decades lacking those ingredients. Now they have all of them, which means this isn't about Shedeur Sanders living up to someone else's expectations. It's about him finally being given the chance to live up to his own. So if the Browns get this right, if the rhythm settles in, if the timing sharpens, if the confidence builds, then what we're watching isn't just development, it's delivery. And that would be a first in modern Cleveland football. No chaos, no collapse, just a franchise finally getting out of its own way. This is it. No more hypotheticals. No more give it time. No more moral victories. The Cleveland Browns have stacked the deck in Shedeur Sanders' favor. Not out of desperation, but out of deliberate, strategic commitment. And now, there are no excuses left. That's not pressure, it's clarity. For the first time, Shedeur steps into a season with a system tailored to his strengths, a coaching staff unified behind him, and protection that's not theoretical. George Warhop is already in motion, teaching, drilling, shaping an offensive line that finally has direction. This isn't about making do. It's about executing with purpose. And every single rep Shedeur takes this season will tell us something. Not just about him, but about whether the Browns have truly escaped the dysfunction that's defined them for so long. This isn't just his test. It's theirs because this is the year that will either validate the new blueprint or expose it. If Sanders flourishes, if he gets the time to process, the rhythm to deliver, and the consistency to lead, then every piece of this reset will have done its job. And suddenly, the Browns go from what if to what's next. They'll have an offense that complements its elite defense, a quarterback who's not a stopgap or a question mark, but a franchise cornerstone, a coaching staff that doesn't just survive the season. It builds a foundation for the next one. That's the future they're fighting for. And look, we've heard the narratives before. It's too soon. It's the Browns. Don't get your hopes up. One good offseason doesn't erase 2 decades of chaos. But this isn't about erasing the past. It's about outgrowing it. It's about doing the hard, boring work that winning teams do. Aligning behind a quarterback, building from the inside out, letting structure, not slogans, define the identity. And if they've truly done that, if they've finally broken the cycle, then 2026 won't just be a turning point for Shedeur Sanders. It'll be the season the Cleveland Browns stopped being a warning and started being a model. Let us know what you think. Has Cleveland finally built something real? Or are we gearing up for another letdown in disguise? Hit like if you're cautiously optimistic. Share this with someone who's still side-eyeing the Warhop hire. And subscribe to stay locked in. Because if the Browns actually pull this off, we'll be breaking it all down, snap by snap, game by game. Stay tuned. The test begins now.